UFC 287, Pereira versus Adesanya 2 takes place this weekend, and I'm going to go through the entire card, starting with the early prelims, ending with the main event, giving my prediction and breakdown for every single fight on the card, starting with the early prelim opener of Sam Hughes versus Jaqueline Amorim. I'm going to be going with Jaqueline Amorim, a very good prospect in the 115-pound division. She trains at American Top Team, and she's just absolutely dominating every single opponent they put in front of her by first round finish. Every single opponent of her entire career. I know a lot of them weren't too great, but she's fought some women with experience on the regional scene, and it all ends the same way. First round finish, whether it be by TKO against some opponents, or one opponent, or by submission. For the rest of them, she's got an armbar in the first, an arm triangle, a rear naked choke, a knee bar, and another armbar recently as well. I really like her, and I think she's going to go far in the women's strawweight division. We see a lot of decisions at women's strawweight and a lot of really competitive fights. So it's hard to know just how good women are before they get to the strawweight division in the UFC, but we rarely see a woman absolutely decimating opponent after opponent in the first round over and over again, and absolutely manhandling them as well and making it look easy. So I'm going to pick Jaqueline Amorim here. Great team behind her as well at ATT. Young, so she's always going to be improving, 27 years of age, and she's given it a bit of time before her last fight. Now she's in the UFC. She's actually earned her spot in the UFC. And for Sam Hughes, I just don't think she's got this one. And I'm not just looking at the record of 7-5, because she does have some things that she can use to give some problems to Jaqueline Amorim, because she does have really good pace. She's tough. She can take it into the later rounds. But I just feel like Jaqueline Amorim's going to have her way with her in this fight and get a finish in the first round by submission. I don't think Sam Hughes is that terrible, but she's still bottom level in the women's strawweight division. You know what I mean? Coming off a loss, not really looking like she's improving in any area. She does have decent wrestling, but I'm going to have to side with the up-and-coming prospect in Jaqueline Amorim. We move on. Up the card, Steve Garcia versus Shayilan Nuerdanbieke. I'm going with Shayilan Nuerdanbieke here. I think he'll win this fight by 29-28 decision. Maybe Steve Garcia will have a decent round. I think both guys are very dangerous on the feet. Shayilan might be a little bit more powerful than Steve Garcia. He's a much better athlete than Steve Garcia as well. Steve Garcia has kind of soy genetics, if you don't mind me saying. Steve Garcia, if you're watching this, I'm sorry. It's just how it is. But yeah, Shayilan Nuerdanbieke, a much better athlete. I think he's a little bit quicker to the target as well when they're swinging back and forth. And I think they're equally as dangerous on the feet, though. I do give the edge to Shayilan, but Steve Garcia is dangerous on the feet as well, coming off a KO win. So he does have power himself. But I'm going to have to side with Shayilan here, because his grappling is the difference. He's really strong against a cage. He's got really good grappling. And it's not amazingly awesome grappling where he just dominates everyone, but it's enough. And I think that's going to be the difference maker here. If both guys are swinging back and forth on the feet, I think it'll be Shayilan who has the opportunity to shoot for a takedown and change it up a little bit. And that's why I'm edging towards him. 29-28. And also Steve Garcia, the last guy who knocked him out, was Asian. So maybe when he's on the pay-per-view stage looking at Shayilan, he'll have a bit of PTSD. Who knows? We move on. Up the card, Trey Ogden versus Ignacio Bahamondes. I'm going to go with Ignacio Bahamondes. I was actually going to pick Trey Ogden to win his last fight that he had that was against Manuel Torres, because I think Trey Ogden's not that terrible. Like, he's a tricky veteran of the game. He's got a bunch of fights, and he just has a real tricky style. But I'm going to go with Ignacio Bahamondes. We've seen improvement from him. And I also think he's had his tricky veteran, and he's learned from it. He's 25 years of age, by the way. Very, very young. He had his tricky veteran. I picked John McDessie to beat him as an underdog a very long time ago when everyone was so high on Ignacio Bahamondes. And John McDessie ended up winning by split decision. It was a very close fight, but he definitely should have won. But he's learned his lesson, and he looked great against Roosevelt Roberts, looked great against Rongju as well, and I think he's really starting to piece it together very technically in the meantime. He's had good finishes before in his career and had highlight reel moments, but now he's starting to be a little bit better throughout the duration of the fight. So I think he's going to beat Trey Ogden. I think he'll win this fight. attack with submission attempts if Trey Ogden does shoot for a takedown. But I reckon he's going to win this one 29-28, picking apart Trey Ogden, chopping at the legs at range. He's got a nice little range advantage here over Trey Ogden as well, that I think he's going to use very well to his advantage. 6'3" in the lightweight division, so probably 6'2", let's be honest. Got a nice bit of a reach advantage, 3.5 inches of reach to work with as well. And for Trey Ogden's style, which is picking at range, I think that's going to be a problem. So I'm going to go with Ignacio Bahamondes here. We move on. Up the card, Cynthia Calvillo versus Lupita Godinez. Let's be real, if Cynthia Calvillo was a man, she would have been cut from the UFC a long time ago, but she's still around. I am going to go with Lupita Godinez. It will be a close fight. I don't see her finishing Cynthia Calvillo. I think it's going to be a decision. Anyone else just have the really strong suspicion that Cynthia Calvillo is going to absolutely miss weight and look terrible on the scale and have a really bad weight cut? I've got a really sneaky suspicion that she's not going to make weight. Now, call me crazy, I know. But yeah, she's had problems of that before. And I don't see her making 115 again. So I'm going to go with Lupita Godinez. I think she'll mix it up more, be better, be able to push a little bit more as well. She's got more hunger in her career at this point. Cynthia Calvillo, 35 years of age. She's had her fight. She's lost over and over again. She's taken damage in her fights as well. She's been finished a few times. I'm going to side with Lupita Godinez being able to push more when it matters most. And I think she'll win the last 2 rounds, or maybe all 3 of the rounds. So 30-27 on some scorecards, 29-28 on the others. I've got Lupita Godinez winning the fight. Plus, she's still not even in her prime, so she's still got more to learn. We move on. Up the card, Gerald Meerschaert versus Joseph Pyfer. The legendary GM3, back at it again, trying to destroy another middleweight hype train. Tried to pull guard on Chimaev, the referee stepped in early. We all know it's true. This is the fight I want to talk about. I'm going with Joe Pyfer. I dare you, GM3, to try and pull off some kind of win. To try and beat Bruno Silva better than Pereira did. And knock him down as well, which Pereira couldn't do. No idea how GM3 works as a fighter, but he's somehow really good now and again. But Joe Pyfer, I honestly was thinking taking GM3 in this matchup, but then Joe Pyfer had that grappling match with Eric Anders. Don't know if you guys have seen it on Fury Pro Grappling 6, but I watched it. I watched it live. And man, he absolutely ragdolled Eric Anders and showed me a side of his game that there wasn't much evidence of. Like, maybe earlier on in his career, he had some evidence of good grappling here and there, but, you know, we'd seen him lose from being slammed to the canvas by Stoltzfus and his arm got injured. We saw him get guillotined before that. That's his only other loss, which is worrying because GM3 will latch it up in the 3rd round, and you know he will. But the grappling that he showed, you know, it's been a few years since then. It's been nearly 3 years since those losses happened. 4 years since the first loss happened. 3.5, sorry. He's massively improved. His stand-up's good. His confidence is there. And man, the grappling against Eric Anders looked really, really good as well. So I actually think he can out-grapple Gerald Meerschaert if he stays on top position and doesn't make any terrible mistakes. And I know that sounds crazy, but when you think about it, I know Meerschaert beat Dustin Stoltzfus, but Stoltzfus was really easily out-grappling him in that fight. Getting top position, winning the fight. We also saw against Jotko as well. Jotko was just, with basic grappling technique, able to just stay on top when it mattered and get takedowns on GM3 and stay out of danger, and GM3 would pull a sub and slip out of it. So I actually think Joseph Pyfer has the option to shoot on GM3 here if it gets tough on the feet. I think it will be it's a bit risky for both of them on the feet. Maybe Pyfer will be getting the better of it. So I will be calling a 1st round KO here for Pyfer and will be hoping that he gets it. But I also think I like the pick because I think he can chuck around Meerschaert if he needs to. And Meerschaert's just every single fight that goes by, we're not seeing an improvement, really. Although he does show some moments of greatness. 35, and Joe Pyfer's coming up, you know, so young, 26 years old. Got the world at his fingertips, you know what I mean? He's really training hard. Trains with Sean Brady and other good grapplers as well. I reckon he'll get this one done, and I think he has options to mix it up as well and be offensive with the grappling if he needs to. We move on up the card. Karl Williams versus Chase Sherman. This was supposed to be Chris Barnett versus Chase Sherman. I'm going with Karl Williams over Chase Sherman here. I'm massively going with Karl Williams over Chase Sherman. I like Chase Sherman. Dude can't grapple. And that's the problem. And Karl Williams took this on short notice. He just fought a month ago, by the way. Took a bit of damage there, but just fought a month ago. Didn't have a full training camp for that one either. So, you know, he's stepping in. He probably stayed in shape and was like, okay, there's a couple heavyweight bouts coming up. I'm looking to get paid. Let's see what happens. And Chase Sherman can't grapple. I know this is why Karl Williams took this fight. One, because it's on UFC 287 and it's a big spotlight for him. But two, you know Karl Williams was like, oh my God, I'm going to ragdoll this dude. I'm going to take him down whenever I want to. It's not like Sherman has much one-punch KO power either. I do like Sherman. I think he's a good personality. I like that he got back into the sport and had his chance. And, you know, now he's trying to rebuild himself a little bit. But yeah, I am going to have to side with Karl Williams. Absolutely ragdolling him in this matchup. And just maybe beating him by TKO to ground and pound or submission. That's what I'll say. Karl Williams gets it done by finish due to his grappling offense. We move on. Up the card, Michelle Waterson-Gomez versus Luana Pinheiro. I'm going with Michelle Waterson-Gomez here. I know it's silly because she's old. You know what I mean? She's losing it a bit. 37. But she still has really close fights with Marina Rodriguez. Angela Hill was a close fight, arguably should have lost, but she got the win by split decision. The Sparza fight was a split decision as well. Ioana and Jacek decision. She made it competitive, but she did lose pretty convincingly. I know she's been losing, but she's still been showing that she can make it very close against some of the best fighters in the women's strawweight division. So I'm going to side with her to win this one over Luana Pinheiro. I think people are looking at Luana Pinheiro's 10-1 record and just saying, you know, Michelle Waterson-Gomez is going to lose this one. She's the underdog here, and quite a big underdog as well. I've got to take Michelle Waterson-Gomez as an underdog. Just being tricky, staying out of range completely, not really making it a fight, scoring a takedown at the end of the round maybe as well. Luana Pinheiro's not too bad, but you know, she was having trouble against Marcos and then faked a KO loss to an illegal up kick. Sam Hughes' fight was kind of from her as well. I just haven't been crazy impressed, and I don't think she finishes Michelle Waterson in the first round. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Michelle Waterson winning this one. I mean, Amanda Lemos couldn't finish Michelle Waterson in the first round, and Waterson was actually doing pretty decent against her as well. So, I'm going to say she wins this fight and wins it by decision, split decision maybe. We move on. Up the card, Kelvin Gastelum versus Chris Curtis. It's sad, but I've got to go with Chris Curtis over Kelvin Gastelum. And I don't mean it's sad that I have to pick Chris Curtis. It's just sad that I kind of feel like Gastelum's going to lose, man. I really feel like Gastelum's going to lose. And he's not a bad underdog to chuck a little bit of money on. I don't mind that, but I just think Chris Curtis wants it more right now, and he hasn't been beaten up a bunch of times. And when you think about it, Gastelum has been doing this. I know he's 31. He has been doing this for so long. So long. Started in 2009, and Curtis has as well. But Curtis never had his moment, you know? Curtis started in 2009 as well, actually. They've started at the same time. But Curtis never had the spot. He's never fought for the titles, been in the main events, had these huge moments where it's time to make some big money. He's on go mode right now. You know what I mean? He's trying to get his. And Kelvin Gastelum's trying to get his back. You know what I mean? It's like he's on a slide. He looked all right against Cannonier. It was a pretty competitive decision, don't get me wrong. Whittaker schooled him, took a bunch of damage in that fight, took damage against Cannonier as well, has been injured so many fights back to back to back. You know what I mean? I just don't trust him to show up in really great condition. And I think Chris Curtis can be patient, not get KO'd by him, because Curtis is a pretty stocky, big guy for the division, and he's got a good chin. And I think he will find body shots on Gastelum, slow him down. And I don't see Gastelum being able to jump around and dance around on the outside the same way a Jack Hermansson could against Chris Curtis. I think he's going to have to try and get in the pocket. And if you're trying to box in the pocket with Curtis, I'm going to trust Curtis to win. So I'm actually going to go with Chris Curtis here. I think he'll put hands on Gastelum. I don't think he'll finish him, but I can see him dropping Gastelum in like 2 of the rounds individually. having a moment where he hurts Gastelum for a second, dropping him in another round. Maybe Gastelum might be getting the better of most of it or going evens with Curtis, but I think Curtis is going to have those moments where he catches Gastelum coming in or lands the last shot of a combination and sits down Gastelum for a second. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Chris Curtis. Plus, Kelvin Gastelum has got a weak body, a weak torso for the middleweight division, and Curtis has some really nasty body shots. So I'm going to go Chris Curtis wins that fight by decision, 29-28 or 30-27. We move on to the main card. Raul Rosas Jr. versus Christian Rodriguez. This is a good one as well. What an amazing card. I'm going with Raul Rosas Jr. However, this ain't some schmuck that he's going to just absolutely steamroll. So I'm going to say he has a lot of problems. That's what I think is going to happen. I'm going to say 29-28 Raul Rosas Jr. If he dominates Christian Rodriguez in the first round, he has legitimate talent and it's time for the rest of the division to be put on notice. But I watched Christian Rodriguez versus Jonathan Pearce. He knows how to survive. You know what I mean? He knows how to... He's very well aware of, like, danger in an MMA fight. He's not going to be put somewhere that he has no idea what to do in a position from. You know what I mean? He's very good at just being in a fight and making it tricky for his opponent. And, you know, Jonathan Pearce is a big dude for featherweight. And now Christian Rodriguez fighting Raul Rosas Jr. at bantamweight. I think he's going to be able to hold his own in the grappling, but I still think Raul Rosas is going to win it positionally and get moments where he's on the back, but Rodriguez might be able to shake him off or just survive in those moments and not get submitted, keep his chin tucked and make it tricky for Raul Rosas Jr. So I'm going to say, and here's my intricate prediction for this one, Raul Rosas Jr. is going to win the first 2 rounds, but he's going to use a lot of energy to get what he wants. He's going to use a lot of energy to get the takedown. I think Rodriguez might, on occasion, get the better of things on the feet as the fight goes on into round 2, but Rosas will have the advantage because I think Rodriguez will be expecting the takedown a bit too much early on. So Rosas will have some moments on the feet early, get the takedown, maybe take the back for the whole of round 1. Rodriguez will survive, and then Rosas will try in the second round to do the same thing. Rodriguez will start stuffing a couple of takedowns, getting the better of the stand-up a little bit. Rosas will eventually get him down, establish control, land some ground and pound, take the back towards the end of the round and try and have a rear naked choke attempt but not get it. And I think in round 3 we're going to see Christian Rodriguez stuff a bunch of the takedowns, stop a back take from Raul Rosas Jr. and start working Raul Rosas Jr. and start doing pretty well. So I'm going to say 29-28 Raul Rosas Jr. I think he loses the 3rd round to Christian Rodriguez. This ain't some schmuck for this star to just go out there and steamroll. Is actually a pretty difficult matchup for him. So if he does steamroll him and submit him in the first round, very well done by Raul Rosas Jr. He's the real deal. We move on. Up the card. Kevin Holland versus Santiago Ponzinibbio. No brainer. No brainer. No offense to Santiago Ponzinibbio, but man, Alex Morono took that fight on what, a week's notice? Maybe 10 days notice, stepped up and took the fight against him. And he struggled and was lucky to get that 3rd round KO. Now, of course, it's not luck. He landed a shot. He knocked out Alex Morono. But, man, he was doing all right in the fight. But to get dropped in round 1, then dropped in round 2 by a Morono who stepped in on very short notice when you were supposed to be fighting Robbie Lawler, I don't like that for Ponzinibbio. That was a really bad look. He's 36 as well. He's getting up there in age. And to come off that performance against Morono where, even though he won, he took a lot of damage, and he took a lot of damage against Mikel Pereira. He took damage against Jeff Neal, even though it was a close fight. I get that. That Morono performance was just so stinky to me. It smelt of absolute smegma. You know what I mean? I just didn't like that performance whatsoever. I'm going to have to go with Kevin Holland here. If Alex Morono, on very short notice, can tag you and hurt you on multiple occasions in a fight, Holland's going to find those moments. He's that type of fighter, like, where it doesn't really matter what happens, he'll catch you at some point in the fight. And when Holland does it, I don't see Ponzinibbio surviving it. Morono's good, but he doesn't have that finishing ability as much as Holland does. So I think Morono, maybe Ponzinibbio's going to be doing pretty good, landing some decent shots, landing some leg kicks on Kevin Holland. And then at some point in, like, round 2, I think we're going to see Holland just catch him with a big shot. Down goes Ponzinibbio. getting hurt, getting hit with ground and pound, trying to come up on a takedown. Holland puts in the dash choke. Santiago escapes it, but Holland's still on top of him, landing big shots over and over again, and then finishes Santiago Ponzinibbio with ground and pound after that. I'm going to go with Kevin Holland, man. I just think even though he lost to Wonderboy, he still tagged Wonderboy early on and rocked him badly, you know? Like, if he had better shot selection after that, he might have ended up dropping Wonderboy and finishing him. He had moments where he might have been able to finish Wonderboy, where he ended up on top, but he just never wanted to. That's a Kevin Holland on a win streak. Well, not a win streak, but you know what I'm saying. He didn't really lose against Chimaev. He saved the card. He got steamrolled. Oh, well. Here's the Wonderboy fight. So he had, like, nothing to lose in that fight, really. I feel like now he's on a 2-fight losing streak, though. He's going to be a bit more serious about making sure to get the win and get his win bonus. And I think he will beat Santiago Ponzinibbio. Second round TKO is what I'm going to go with here. And I just think Ponzinibbio's taken too much damage, and that chin ain't what it once was since Li Jingliang snatched it from him. You know what I'm saying? Not to mention, Kevin Holland has an 8-inch reach advantage over him. We move on. Up the card. Rob Font versus Adrian Yanez. I'm going to go with Adrian Yanez. And it hurts me to say that. It really does hurt me to say that because I was picking Rob Font for a long time. But during my preparation for my prediction on Marlon Vera versus Corey Sandhagen, I ended up watching that Rob Font-Marlon Vera fight a lot. And I just couldn't help but realize that that is a career-changing amount of damage to take for a 35-year-old at bantamweight. It was just the Aldo fight, he got damaged a bunch and got rocked a bunch in that fight as well. But man, Marlon Vera really did put a really bad beating on him. And it was back-to-back as well, and he's taken a year off. There's something in my right eye right now. Jose Aldo put a beating on him in December and hurt him in multiple moments of that fight. And he was back in April, getting hurt on multiple occasions by Marlon Vera, and really badly hurt as well, to where his face was unrecognizable. It was like a bantamweight version of Jiri Prohaska versus Dominic Reyes. You know what I'm saying? And after that fight, I was like, there's no way Reyes is going to take shots the same way again. You can't take that level of facial structural damage. And Font must have came out of that fight with a broken orbital, a busted jaw, and a brow ridge must have been fractured at some point. Like, he must have came out with some real damage for his face to be swollen up like that. So I'm going to side with Yanez. I think Font will be doing very good early on. I think he will be landing a lot on Yanez. I actually think Yanez lost to Davy Grant. I've watched it a lot of times in the build-up to this one. But Davy Grant's one of those guys, you know, where he just makes it difficult. I thought Yanez clearly lost to Davy Grant. I thought it was a robbery decision, but we move on anyway. And I don't think much of Tony Kelly. I don't think much of Randy Costa. I don't think much of Gustavo Lopez. I don't think much of Victor Rodriguez. Half of them aren't even in the... All but Davy Grant aren't in the UFC anymore. And Davy Grant arguably beat him. So, you know, we gave a lot of shade towards O'Malley for that, but not Yanez, I guess. So this is a big jump up for him. So I think he will be losing, because we saw Randy Costa landing a bunch of jabs on him, a bunch of straight shots. But he will adjust. I think Yanez will adjust, and I'm willing to bet on his improvement as well. He hasn't fought since June 2022, and I don't think he's been injured. I think he went over to work with Aljo and Marab at Serra Longa. So that's going to be a big factor in this as well. I think Font will be winning, landing good shots. Boom, body shot lands from Yanez. Font feels it a bit, backs up a little bit. Font starts coming back into the fight. Boom. Big shot to the temple lands from Yanez. Font goes all wobbly. Yanez finds his finishing blows and finishes off Rob Font with like a body shot, headshot combo against the cage. And a bit of a star is born in Adrian Yanez after a tough first round in a fun fight back and forth into the second round at least. So that's how I think it's going to go. We move on. So I'm going with Adrian Yanez, I should say. We move on. Up the card, Gilbert Burns versus Jorge Masvidal. I'm going Gilbert Burns. Should he be a 5-1 favorite? No, he shouldn't. He should be like a 2-1 favorite. Masvidal's got a solid chance. He does, to catch Burns. And we've seen Burns get caught by Dan Hooker. In a lower weight class, I get it. But Usman was able to just sort of pepper him and eventually finish him with strikes on the feet. So That was a thing as well. And, you know, but then the Chimaev fight, man. It was like Burns activated a new level of himself. And then just so happens after that one, he just dominates Neil Magny. Better than a lot of people have fought Neil Magny as well. When you think that Jeff Neal lost to him. You know what I mean? I know Neil Magny gets a lot of trash for being, like, mediocre. But, like, Chiesa's a great grappler. Took Neil Magny to a 3-2/4-1 decision. You know what I mean? Neil Magny is, like, a tough guy to make look easy. He's an easy guy to beat, but a tough guy to make look easy. Shavkat took him to the second round. Almost had him in the first, but he beat Daniel Rodriguez. I think Magny, I know I trash him a lot, but to make him look that easy and just dominate him, Burns is hitting a stride right now in the welterweight division where he's like, I've got a solid chance. I ain't lost to Edwards. You know what I mean? I got a clear path. If I beat Masvidal, it's a title elimination bout in the welterweight division. So I think Gilbert Burns is going to win this one, man. I think Jorge Masvidal is going to get dropped. I think he's going to get dropped and subbed by Gilbert Burns. That's what I'm going to go with here. I think he gets dropped and subbed by Gilbert Burns. And Masvidal normally does have great submission defense. So maybe if I didn't think he was going to get dropped, I would take him by losing by decision. If that's how anyway Burns would win. But I think Burns is going to catch him because Masvidal is getting into this moment in his career where he's a little bit too comfortable on the feet at times. And he gets all loosey-goosey. And you can do that against Nate Diaz. And Till dropped him for it early on in their fight, but then he sort of pieced it back together. But Till don't have that top game afterwards. Not like a Jeff Molina top game. I'm talking like a... Darren Till doesn't have that ability to go and attack on the ground after he's dropped a guy like Masvidal, the same way a Gilbert Burns can. I feel like Masvidal's going to have some problems, man. I really do. I really do think he will. Masvidal's good, but he loads up a lot of what he throws. And Burns ain't the type of guy to give him what he wants in the striking. Burns ain't going to, like, just pump a jab and then Masvidal will be able to time it with a counter right hand. You know, Burns ain't going to throw a right hand and leave him open for a left hook counter from Masvidal. He's going to wait for Masvidal to go at him. And I think that's going to lead Masvidal to lead with his kicks, which is what he often does. He often leads with his kicks by just throwing him to the body or throwing him to the leg. He was doing that against Usman a lot and eventually got punished for it, but then got KO'd later on eventually once he feared the takedown of Kamaru Usman. But I think we're actually going to see like a Masvidal going for a body kick off the lead leg on Burns or going for a leg kick at some point. And Burns just uncorking a left hook. Bang. Dropping Masvidal for a second. Masvidal's good. He's scrambling back up. Burns is on the back. And it's just a problem from there. Burns is punching him. Masvidal's trying to scramble. Burns is still punching, waiting for either a rear naked choke or an arm triangle from top position to open itself up. So I got Gilbert Burns winning. I think Masvidal's going to have a lot of problems here. He's going to worry a bit as well about this matchup. He's 38 and a half nearly. 38 and a half. Bunch of court cases going on during the build-up of this fight. You know? I don't like that, man. I know I thought Gilbert Burns was old, but Masvidal's had a long career. And there's something else I want to mention about Masvidal. I know a lot of people bought this whole, I was in the woods, and he was mentioning on Joe Rogan he was in the woods on a reality TV show, and he just decided to start knocking people out. And no, he's got more power now because he decided to start knocking people out. He caught Till on the chin. You know what I mean? He beat up Nate Diaz quite a bit. Hurt him quite badly. I get that. But other than that, just a flying knee from Ben Askren, and all of a sudden, Masvidal's this new fighter. Lost twice to Usman. Got dominated by Covington outside of one punch. Before that, Masvidal weren't really just smoking people. He beat Cerrone, but Cerrone gets finished. Ellenberger got his toes stuck in the cage, if you remember that fight. Watched it recently. He's not smoking people all the time. So to bet on him to just smoke Gilbert Burns, it's a tough bet to make if I'm trying to be correct on a prediction. So I'm going Gilbert Burns by submission, late first round or maybe in the second round. We move on up the card to another fight, which is Alex Pereira versus Israel Adesanya. I'm going with Alex Pereira by second round KO over Israel Adesanya. That's what my original prediction was for their first fight. I think there's a lot of factors as to why I'm going to pick Alex Pereira again this time. Not to mention he KO'd Israel Adesanya in the last fight. I know he didn't get slept out cold, but we rarely see Adesanya take that type of concussive damage in his fights, right? Other than against Kelvin Gastelum, we rarely see him take that level of damage. And he's had a long career of taking damage. You know what I'm saying? And he got finished badly in the 5th round. And it weren't that long ago. It was 5 months ago. Under 5 months ago. So, I've got to go with Pereira here. I had a theory in the first fight that they had in the UFC that Pereira was going to be too big for Izzy to just tee off on. He was going to be too intimidating with his power for Adesanya to move forward at all. And he was going to be too good at dealing with the leg kicks. And he was. He dealt with all of the leg kicks of Adesanya, checked a bunch of them. It's a surprise and actually kind of lucky. Adesanya didn't suffer a major damage to his foot earlier on in that fight. I know he got his leg deadened by the kicks of Pereira, but the amount that Pereira checked his kicks, it's a wonder Adesanya's foot wasn't broken at some point in that fight. So I've got to go Pereira here, man. He dealt with the leg kicks well, and he had a great second round after getting semi-concussed in the first. He was standing in the pocket against Adesanya at the end of the first round. Standing there, right in the pocket with Adesanya, and not throwing anything. To me, that's a lapse of judgment. Whereas in the 5th round, when he finished Adesanya, he was hunting for it, and Adesanya was trying to avoid it, and trying to move out of the way, which is what he'd been doing for the majority of the fight. But then he got caught. And that was Pereira's doing. I feel like Adesanya rocking Pereira at the end of the first was more on Pereira being in the pocket, and it was just a silly, stupid lapse of judgment where he must have thought, I'm going to try and secure the first round here. Damn. You know what I mean? I got caught by a big shot. I'm just stood in the pocket staring at him for too long, admiring my work, and he gets caught on the chin. And to do what he did in the second round and win the second round quite clearly as well, after being literally on the doors of the Shadow Realm, knocking on the door of the Shadow Realm at the end of the first round, to have such a little amount of time on the stall, and then come back out in round 2 and win it clearly against Adesanya with the striking, I've got to go Pereira. I've got to go Pereira. I think if he doesn't get rocked at the end of the first round, he makes the reads way quicker, and he's more with it in the second. And I think Adesanya is going to be a little bit more aggressive with his boxing. I think he had a good moments with his boxing in the first fight. So I think he's going to try and go to his boxing a bit more and not kick as much and try and sneak his kicks in a bit more rather than spamming them on the outside. And I think that's going to leave him open a bit more as he comes into that counter shot from Alex Pereira. So I'm going to go with Alex Pereira. I really am. I think he'll catch Israel Adesanya, hurt him badly, chase him down. Adesanya will try shoot. Pereira will stuff it, land a knee to the body. Big shots against the cage. Sleep Adesanya against the cage with a big left hand. I'm going with Alex Pereira getting the job done again by KO in the second round. That's what I think is going to happen. Big shot, finishes off Adesanya. And I also want to say Adesanya, people are saying he's grappling on his Instagram. He does that before every fight. You know what I'm saying? He did that before the first fight, and he tried to grapple Pereira, and Pereira stuffed him. There was so much more of a surprise factor for Pereira. Adesanya knew Pereira weren't going to try to take him down. Pereira did surprise him with one, but Adesanya was like, I'm the guy who can mix it up if I want to. And now Pereira knows, okay, he might mix it up a bit here. This might not be a stand-up fight. You know what I mean? Whereas before he had that constant wonder, what if he just grapples me the whole time? Am I ready for that yet? On the biggest stage ever? That was his first time in the spotlight. I know he's fought for Glory Kickboxing Championships. That was his first time in the spotlight. And he passed. That experience for him is massive. For a guy with a record of 7-1, that extra one fight at the highest level of the sport in experience is massive. Adesanya's been there for a long time, and he still couldn't win. I've got to go with Israel Adesanya. Freudian slip. I've got to go with Alex Pereira with a KO in the second round. I think he'll catch him. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Toodle Pip. I'll see you later. Goodbye. Yeah.